And so we begin once again, beginning again, letting the body settle in its place. Letting the mind gather itself and come together as best we can, bringing the heart and the mind, the attention at the breath, letting mindfulness show us the way, awareness arising. As we take a few moments to let our bodies, hearts, and minds relax in place. Relaxed yet upright, as the teachings say. But sometimes we might need to stand up or lay down. So whatever position is comfortable for you, to be able to still be attentive as best you can. And we take a moment to take refuge in the Buddha and the Dhamma and the Sangha. The fundamental awakeness that's ever present and always available, that the Buddha or the awakened one was able to see for himself after a lot of hard work. And that we also have that opportunity to be awake in this very moment, especially with mindfulness and awareness there. And in gratitude for the Dhamma, that we freely and fearlessly meet the way things are right now, a teaching of the truth of the way things are. And our Sangha, our intimate, infinite connectedness with all beings. We start with that connectedness with ourselves and bringing kindness into the picture, that we take time to hold ourselves gently and find ways of letting kindness be present in our hearts with our sitting practice, bringing a kind of joyousness to ourselves for choosing this time to be together, and acknowledging with gratitude that we do choose this time for ourselves to really see clearly what habits of the mind arise, that what we cling to, where we may suffer by that clinging. And watching as what we're attending to, what awareness is seeing, that we may notice that it also passes away, arises, conditions come together, we're present with them, and we see as those conditions change. Beginning to see directly the changing nature of whatever mindfulness shines the light on. And as we settle into the breath at the nostrils, or the breath at the belly, or perhaps a touch point of sitting on the cushion or hands touching, we have this anchor at the body to return to if we find ourselves roaming out into long thought patterns. We can come back to the present moment with the breath. Or we can wake up right there in that present moment to see as that moment passes away. Having this curiosity and willingness to open, and having clear awareness that recognizes the arising and passing of many emotional states. Fear can often arise without contracting or identifying with it. We take refuge in the truth of that awakening, and that can inspire us on our path toward fearlessness. And so taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha is really our container and encouragement for our own potential for liberation. That we have this potential to awaken. And part of what has kept it alive for all these centuries, through passing on of the Dhamma from lay people, monks and nuns, all the Sanghas, kept it alive for all these centuries. It rests in the fact that it demonstrates what is actually possible for each of us in this very moment. As it says in the Dhammapada, I think it's Dhammapada number 20, you have to do your own work. Enlightened ones will show the way. Those who practice meditation will free themselves from the chains of death. And so we do this brave and courageous work of recognizing dukkha, and understanding through direct practice the truth of the origin of dukkha, identifying craving or thirst, the desire that we see causes the suffering, and the truth of the cessation of dukkha, the end of suffering. Which the Buddha identifies as nibbana, the deathless state. And as a true prescription, the solution is in the truth of the path. To be free from dukkha, he illuminated this eightfold path. which gives us hope to watch ourselves, watch the mind clearly, be with the heart. And as we did the other night, last night, we can also employ the idea of noting to help us, particularly when we have repetitive thoughts that seem to carry us away. We can just notice thoughts about whatever it is. Thoughts in the mind, or even sensations in the body that are repetitive, sometimes to have a little bit of distance from falling into the storyline. We can notice and slightly label, to put a little distance so that we can begin understanding that we can't grasp at what's happening, and that we can gently label it as a way to not be quite so attached to identifying with it as belonging to us. And so with that, I'll just let us sit for a while, rising and falling, taking refuge in the triple gem of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. As we take this time to cultivate the wholesome and purify the mind, letting go what might be unskillful as we see it, so that we can continue holding ourselves in kindness and inclining the heart and mind toward the skillful. We can reflect upon the Four Noble Truths, or we can reflect on the 5 factors if they come around in our hearts and minds, or whatever Dhamma of the truth of the teachings. We can incline the mind toward noticing those and letting go of attachment to something that might not be so skillful for us. rising and falling, coming together, going apart, seeing clearly with just enough energy to be interested, to begin again as we get lost or confused, going back to the breath, or opening in that very present moment when we become aware again, seeing the impermanence of the breath arising and passing, knowing it clearly. Arousing interest, building faith and confidence in the practice as we see clearly moment to moment what happens when we cling to something that's arising. And yet being with it for its full amount of time before it falls away on its own without pushing it away. Embracing fully and wholly what is arising with mindfulness and awareness, with wisdom that arises. And as we see this arising and passing away moment to moment, and wisdom can see clearly the letting go of clinging, we can use energy, just the right amount of effort to keep us interested. And patience is also there as one of the paramis. Patience is there to show us the good in the development of the noble qualities. When there's patience, the mind can become concentrated and free from external distraction. We can begin to see those arising conditions that come together as impermanent and not belonging to ourselves. Slowly letting us let go of I-making and mind-making as phenomenon that exists for a while, consists of nothing to hang on to, arise and pass away according to their conditions. They don't come from anywhere, they don't go anywhere, they're not established anywhere. There isn't any agency. And cultivating patience is our way, one of the ways of seeing things clearly. rising and falling, coming and going, being present, heat, tension, roughness, smoothness, noticing the elements of heat throughout the body or somewhere around the diaphragm as we breathe, or have the fires of our bowels and intestines as they process, or the air or throughout our body as we're breathing, the air element, the water element of all the liquids in our bodies, the earth element of our bones, the density of our physical being. Mindfulness gives us insight into the characteristics of everything that exists. We can gain this insight by using mindfulness to investigate our body, our feelings, our thoughts, and phenomenon. And so that's why we train to meditate on the breath. It's always present and easy to observe. And when our mind is united with the breath, it is more likely to be in the present moment. And that mindfulness and clear comprehension can uncover that all of these parts of the body are composed of these elements that are always changing, because we're subject to growth and decay and death and disease. We begin to see that lasting satisfaction is not in identifying with the body. And we can see clearly that it's, once again, not me and not mine. And so this mindfulness of the body and mindfulness of feelings helps us become aware that suffering arises from our mind's habitual reactions to feelings and experiences, sometimes a confused sense of self in our neutral feelings. But everything we see clearly, we can see that it arises, it comes to a peak, and it passes away. And this is really the path to liberation, complete freedom from suffering by seeing clearly the impermanent nature. And we do it one simple breath at a time, as long as we can be aware of that breath. moment by moment as we return to begin again. We can see this constant impermanence arising as we try to grasp to what seems pleasant or try to push away what might seem unpleasant. And in the process, we hold ourselves gently as we see clearly that change is a central feature of our life, and it can be exhilarating and frightening and exhausting and relieving, and can spark sadness or happiness or resistance or grasping. As we develop this insight into impermanence, we are pointed toward becoming more equanimous in the midst of change and wiser in how we respond to what comes and goes. We can begin to see that it's almost like one extended meditation on transience as a means to freedom. As the Buddha said in his last words, all conditioned things are impermanent. And connected to that, he said, strive on with diligence. And may we have this gentle, kind striving. May we be diligent in our pursuit of this kind of happiness that is non-worldly as we glimpse moments of freedom. As we see that suffering isn't inherent in the world of impermanence, but suffering arises when we cling. And when that clinging disappears, the impermanence doesn't give rise to suffering. And so we make this attempt to end our clinging and not to try to escape from the transient world. We just see things arise and pass away, arise and pass away in our formal meditation time and in our daily practice. Having this insight from directly seeing into the nature of things. And so we hold ourselves in kindness. As we let go of the constantly attending to each arising condition and seeing it pass, to gently inclining our hearts and minds to the metta practice, to holding ourselves gently, to seeing ourselves in happiness, to holding ourselves in kindness and joy through all our difficulties, that we may have compassion for ourselves. May we take care of ourselves happily, whatever that means. Just noticing, taking care of ourselves happily. May we have ease in this life. May I be free from suffering. Letting this kindness percolate in our heart and mind, in our space of our body, breathing in this container. May we let this kindness include a teacher or a benefactor. Seeing this person clearly. May they be happy and healthy, free from harm. Letting our hearts touch upon this inclination to have well-wishing for others. Encouraging kindness and letting go of harmfulness, that we may include within our circle a friend, seeing what friend comes to mind, holding this friend in our hearts. May you be free from inner and outer harm. May you be safe and protected. Or use what phrases or feeling comes into your mind stream to encompass our friend within our hearts. May you take care of yourself happily. May you live peacefully and have ease in your life. And letting these thoughts of loving kindness and friendliness flow to a neutral person. seeing who comes into view. Knowing just as I wish to be happy, you also wish to be happy. Envisioning this neutral person in our hearts, inclining the heart and mind in whatever way works for you, with a phrase or a feeling or a felt sense to include the neutral person. That they be happy and healthy and free from harm. Continuing with this neutral person. Just as I wish to be happy, I know that you also wish to be happy. Letting this kindness develop and infuse our hearts that we may include other beings, those seen and those unseen, beings that are known and unknown, beings that are in suffering, beings that are in joy. Those beings that are enlightened and those who are unenlightened. Those that swim and fly, walk, crawl, below the water's surface and above the water's surface. All creatures walking on the earth's surface and flying in the air, seen and unseen. May all beings everywhere have happiness and the causes of happiness. Be free from suffering. be free from danger. Anicca vata sankara upadavaya domino upakitava meruchanti te sam vapasamo sukho. All conditioned things arise and pass away, are subject to impermanence. And seeing this clearly with mindfulness brings the greatest happiness, which is peace. May we hold these things dear and see the rising and the passing away in all of our moments of awareness. And may the merits of our practice be of benefit to all beings, knowing that we aren't alone in this well-wishing of others. We are someone else's subject of a neutral person. This web of Sangha, this web of conditions that arise, come together, and pass away, and the joy that can arise in the practice, and this active sharing benefiting others. Thank you so much for your practice. It brings great joy to me. I can reflect on the happiness occurring even when you're unhappy in your practice. That there's this nurturance that we have of each other and this patience that we try to develop, and this understanding that as we see things clearly, there's nothing real that we can actually cling to, which in an interesting way is joy in the practice. So thank you so much. And if we want to